Charles Dickens's Oliver Twist presents a vivid panorama of Victorian society, exposing the cruelty of institutions and the corruption of urban poverty. Among its most notorious figures stands Fagin, the cunning leader of a gang of juvenile thieves. Often referred to as the Jew in the novel, Fagin is one of Dickens's most memorable villains, whose role in the narrative extends beyond his actions into symbolism and broader social commentary. Though controversial in his portrayal, Fagin remains central to Dickens's exploration of morality, crime, and responsibility. Role in the narrative. Fagin is introduced as the mastermind of a criminal underworld, operating a den in London where he trains orphans and homeless boys to become pickpockets. When Oliver runs away to the city, it is Fagin who ensnares him, attempting to draw him into a life of crime. From that point forward, Fagin exerts a constant influence over Oliver's fate, either directly by trying to corrupt him, or indirectly, through his control of Bill Sikes and the Artful Dodger. By bringing Oliver into his gang, Fagin exposes the boy to temptation and danger. The attempted burglary at Chertsey, orchestrated with Fagin's involvement, becomes one of the pivotal episodes in Oliver's suffering and eventual rescue. Fagin connects different elements of the plot. He collaborates with monks, manipulates Sikes into violent crimes, and serves as a dark counterpart to Oliver's benefactors like Mr. Brownlow. Fagin's constant surveillance and schemes keep Oliver in danger even after he is taken into safety. He symbolizes the ever-present pull of corruption that threatens to reclaim Oliver at any moment. By driving the conflict and embodying the dangers of the urban underworld, Fagin ensures that Oliver's survival and ultimate redemption appear all the more remarkable. Symbolic significance. Beyond his narrative function, Fagin carries heavy symbolic weight. Dickens uses him to represent corruption, exploitation, and the darker side of Victorian society. Perhaps Fagin's most significant symbolic role is his corruption of children. He takes in abandoned boys and turns them into tools for theft, using promises of food and shelter to bind them into criminality. His relationship with the Artful Dodger exemplifies this. Dodger's wit and energy, which might have flourished in honest circumstances, are perverted by Fagin's tutelage. Oliver's resistance to Fagin's influence symbolizes the struggle of innocence against systemic corruption. Dickens often describes Fagin in grotesque imagery, his hands rubbing together, his eyes glittering, his movements almost animalistic. These features emphasize his role as a personification of greed and vice, someone who lives off the moral and material exploitation of others. He hoards stolen goods in a secret cache, an image of selfish accumulation that contrasts with the generosity of characters like Mr. Brownlow. Many critics view Fagin as a devil-like character. He tempts children into crime, offers them apparent rewards, and ultimately leads them toward ruin. His manipulation of Nancy, whose conscience pulls her away from crime, echoes the biblical struggle between sin and redemption. In this sense, Fagin is less a man than a symbolic force of corruption, embodying the moral dangers Dickens saw in urban poverty. Broader implications. Through Fagin, Dickens critiques not only individual wickedness but also society's failure to provide alternatives for people experiencing poverty. Fagin's ability to recruit children into crime highlights the absence of social care, education, and opportunity. The criminal underworld flourishes not simply because of villains like Fagin but because society abandons its vulnerable members, leaving them open to exploitation. Fagin is one of Dickens's most controversial creations, frequently identified as the Jew. This portrayal reflects the anti-Semitic stereotypes of Dickens's time, in which Jews were often depicted as greedy, manipulative, and morally corrupt. While Dickens later expressed regret and sought to mitigate this image in his works, Fagin remains a troubling example of how prejudice shaped Victorian literature. Nevertheless, the character's enduring power comes not only from stereotype but also from Dickens's skill in creating a vivid, theatrical villain. Fagin raises questions about the degree to which criminals are products of society versus their own choices. While Dickens portrays Fagin as personally malevolent, the fact that he preys on children abandoned by the state highlights systemic culpability. Is Fagin wholly responsible for the corruption of boys like the Artful Dodger, or is society equally guilty for leaving them unprotected? In raising this ambiguity, Dickens broadens the moral scope of the novel. Unlike Oliver, who is deliberately idealized, Fagin is a more psychologically complex character. He is cunning, fearful, and self-preserving, traits that humanize him even as they repel. His terror during his trial and execution scene strips away his manipulative bravado, revealing a man driven by survival. This complexity makes him both horrifying and fascinating, ensuring his place among Dickens's most memorable villains. Fagin's eventual capture and execution serve as the novel's moral climax. His fall is inevitable. Dickens ensures that crime, no matter how cunning, leads to ruin. The description of his terror in prison strips away his theatricality and reveals a man consumed by fear of death. This ending not only satisfies the reader's demand for justice but also reinforces Dickens's moral message, that exploitation and corruption, no matter how profitable in the short term, are unsustainable. Conclusion. Fagin's role in Oliver Twist is multifaceted. He is a narrative driver, a symbolic figure of corruption, and a broader commentary on society's failures and prejudices. Narratively, he entangles Oliver in crime and links the major characters together. Symbolically, he embodies greed, vice, and the corruption of innocence, functioning almost as a devil figure within the story. On a broader level, he highlights both Dickens's critique of systemic neglect and the troubling persistence of cultural stereotypes. Fagin's lasting power lies in his complexity, grotesque yet compelling, villainous yet pitiable, personal yet symbolic. Through him, Dickens dramatizes the dangers of exploitation, the vulnerability of people with low incomes, and the necessity of moral responsibility. While Oliver represents innocence preserved, Fagin represents corruption embodied. Together, they frame the ethical and social conflicts at the novel's heart.